So now we are going to do the subtler selflessness of person, which is, what is that? Selflessness of? Autonomous substantial existence or autonomous substantial reality, whichever way you might put. First, let me explain what does it mean by autonomous? What does it mean by substantial? Say, say someone says that, oh, tomorrow all of you are going to become Buddha. Is there any substance to this talk? No, right? There is no substance to his talk. So similarly, if you try to examine, where the table is, finally you come nowhere. You're lost. The table disappears. So there is no substance as a table, So this is a broad idea of what it means by substantial, right? Next is autonomous. Autonomous means, by oneself or independently. So this is the meanings, the meanings of the two words, autonomous and substantial. Now let's try to work out with a complete thing. Okay. This needs to be done in the form of interaction. So be very attentive. If you miss something, that's it. You lost everything. Okay. Okay. Say, where are you sitting right now? In the cushion, or which part of the world you are in? Sravasti Abbey. Which part of Sravasti Abbey? Meditation hall. Are you sure that you are in the meditation hall of Sravasti Abbey?
Yes.
Are you sure?
Yes.
Next question. How do you know that you are in Sravasti Abbey's meditation hall? How do you know that? Okay. Which consciousness? Are you sure? Mental consciousness. How does the mental consciousness know that you are in Sravasti Abbey's meditation hall?
Someone told me that the first time I arrived. They brought me here and said, this is the meditation hall. And
Which one? And do you think that you are in the same hall? Same hall doesn't mean, I'm not speaking about the impermanence, these things, forget about that thing.
yes, the same hall.
How do you know that you are in the same hall? What tells you that you are in the same hall? Through experience. You rely on experience? How can you say that your experience is correct and the insane person's experience is wrong? Insane persons.
I have more people on my side.
Sorry?
I have more people on my side.
You didn't ask anyone else?
You did. They all agreed.
But how do you know that you are not all insane? All insane person may agree. It doesn't mean.
In insane asylum, this is
But how do you know that we are not all insane?
Because it functions
How do you know that it functions?
in accordance with the...
Look, these are all the questions we need to ask. Right? Very interesting, very important to really explore in depth into emptiness. All these explorations have to be done. So from there you come to know that our perceptions are really not necessarily true. We rely so much on our perception. And in true sense, who knows, who really evaluates this perception is true? That's really very important. Anyway, this is just, just tickling you. Okay, so now my main point is, are you really aware that you are in the meditation hall? Speak honestly. Yes. What makes you aware that you are in the meditation hall? Right at this moment. Is your mind which tells you that you are in meditation hall. Which mind? Eye consciousness, which sees the hall?
No.
Then what? And you close eyes, somebody simply, brings you somewhere, you don't know where, without the eye consciousness. How do you know that you are in a meditation hall? You don't. But now, at this moment, you know. So it is your eye consciousness, eye consciousness which gives the information to your mental consciousness, which tells you, which then decides that you are in a meditation hall, right? Okay. So why I'm asking this question and why I want you to interact with me is because, unless until your mind really follows this investigation, the understanding of the absence of autonomous substantial weight will make no sense, right? Just follow the analysis in the form of interaction. Okay, so now you believe, you trust your eye consciousness, right? That you are in the meditation hall. Okay. Is it that you are trying to use some kind of reasons to say that you are in the meditation hall? Or you are saying that you know that you are in the meditation hall, you know that by means of direct access to it. Direct access. What is that direct access? Eye consciousness. Again, same thing. So you mean to say that eye consciousness is directly saying the meditation hall? Yes. Are you sure? Yes. Okay. Are you seeing the outside of this hall? No. What are you seeing? Just inside. Okay. You are seeing the walls? Yes. Are you really seeing the walls? Yes. What does it mean by wall?
Vertical structure.
Okay, it's a structure. What,
Separating us from the outside.
Okay, so it is some thickness, it is some height, right? And length. With your shape and these things. Okay, so what percent of the wall you are seeing? Say the percentage, the wall that you see, for example, the wall towards the side of a jumble, so this wall. You are seeing 100% of it, or how many percent of the wall you are seeing? Sorry? 12%. Why not 100%? No, just this wall. That's just this wall. 100% you are seeing. Okay, right. What is this wall consisted of? Is it just the inside of the wall, which makes the whole wall, or the outside as well? So you are not seeing the outside part of the wall. You are not seeing the in-between part of the wall. So if you consider all these things which constitute the wall, towards when a jumble, just tell me, you are seeing just the top surface, very thin top surface of the wall, right? Is that the wall? No. So what you are seeing is not the wall. Part of it, and it's not the wall. Your body is not you. Your body is not you, right? Similarly, what you are seeing is actually not the wall. what you're seeing is actually not the meditation hall. Right? So this means that you have deceived me by telling me that, it is your consciousness which has a direct access to this hall, meditation hall. Right? Look. Now look. When in the beginning, when I asked you, what made you think that you are in this meditation hall, you said that it is our eye consciousness which has direct access to this hall that makes me think that I'm in this hall, right? Okay. Why you replied that with great confidence is because you have a feeling that this hall exists as autonomous, substantial nature. How? Now look, you think that what you see as a hall, actually it is wrong to say that you are not seeing the hall. You are seeing the hall, of course, you are right, you are not wrong. But when I push you with all these questions, then you become more and more hesitant. You are becoming more and more hesitant. Why becoming hesitant? Not because that your original answer that I'm seeing the whole directly is wrong. Not because of that, but because of something else, which I have not spoken to you, which you have not spoken to me, but deep down you have a misconception underlying your answer. And what is this? Your misconception that you are seeing the whole directly, you are seeing the whole as autonomous, substantial nature, right? I know still you are not, you got something clearing away, but still something is there, vague. Okay. Let me go still further away. Actually, I'm saying that it is undeniable. We cannot deny the fact that you are seeing the whole. But at the same time, we now come to know that what we are seeing is actually just a part of a whole, and what exactly we are seeing is not the whole itself. But simply because we are seeing just a part of it, and if we say that we are not seeing the whole, then all the people of the world may think that you are insane, right? Or I'm saying, I'm not seeing jumble. I'm just seeing just in a surface, thin layer of the jumble spot. If you say that, everybody will say you're crazy. So this is that you have to equally say that you are not seeing even the thin layer of jumble, because thin layer also has the back and front. So you have to say that I'm not seeing anything. I'm not eating anything. I'm not doing anything. I'm not here. You have to say that. So this means that you are total crazy, right? So the best thing to reconcile this is that stick to your original belief that you are seeing this whole. But something wrong is there in your original belief, When you feel something uncomfortable here through these questions, actually the discomfort is created by your one of the original mistaken views. And you don't know what that is. Now let's see. Of course, on the one hand, you are seeing the whole, by your eyes, number one. Number two, what you are truly seeing is simply a part of it, which is not the whole. Number two. So how do you reconcile these two? How do you reconcile these two ideas? Is that the best thing to reconcile is by saying, I'm seeing this whole by means of seeing something else which is not the whole. I'm seeing this whole, but why I say that I'm seeing this whole is because, I see something else, and then on the basis of that, I say I'm seeing this whole. Right? So when you say that, then that reconciles the two ideas. Right? Actually, when you reconcile the two ideas, you are actually giving up your original idea. original concept, the belief that I'm seeing the whole directly, not through something else. I'm seeing the whole directly means that the whole is viewed. You are seeing the whole as so autonomous by itself without depending on something else for your perceiving it. As so autonomous, as something so concrete, which says that I'm the whole here. But in true sense, other than these parts which you are seeing, there is no separate whole as such. So there is no substantial whole as such. It's just the parts. What every time you try to point to something as a whole that you are seeing, you see that it's just part of it. It's not a whole. So there you cannot really point to. In fact, if we think carefully, through such reasoning, through such exploration, we see that you can never point to a time or point to a situation where you are seeing the whole. Whether you look at it from the outside or inside, you are simply seeing a thin layer. That's it. So which means that no one has actually seen the whole. If no one has seen the whole doesn't exist. If it doesn't exist, there is no substantial existence to it. There is no substance to it. On top of this, when you say you perceive the whole, it is actually by means of perceiving else, by dependence. It's not by autonomous perception. It is by perception is happening by dependence on the perception of something else that you say you perceive the whole. So it is by means of, the perception is happening because of dependence on something else. It's not, the perception is not by means of autonomous nature, autonomous activity. So the whole is lacking autonomous substantial nature. If you examine that way, then we see that when you look at the whole, there's a solid whole over there, But if you examine like that, who is actually seeing the whole? What I'm seeing is not the whole. It's just a thin layer of it. And from someone else may point to, that is the prayer meditation hall of Sravasti Abbey. But what he's seeing is, again, just the surface, external thing. And if you say that what he's seeing is the whole, then there should be millions of the whole, because there are millions of such parts. So, where's the whole? If you reflect, keep on reflecting in this way, then you see that your original version of what whole is, as how you identify the whole to be, will simply crumble down and evaporate. Right? So there is a total vacuity happening. So this vacuity, the experience of vacuity, is the experience of the absence or the selflessness of autonomous substantial nature of the whole. Right? This is how we should meditate. So just keep on reflecting in this fashion. Keep on reflecting. And then gradually, at one point, you start discovering disparity between, the outcome of this analysis and the original belief as to how the whole appears to your mind, as to how you think you are identifying the whole to be in a so direct way. There's a disparity. So as soon as you discover this disparity, then you see that your original perception of the whole to be, identifiable as autonomous substantial nature will dissolve. So this absence, experience of the absence of that solidly, autonomously identifiable nature as the whole is what is known as this selflessness of the autonomous nature of the whole. Then you extend the same thing to yourself. You think that, if I don't see myself, who else is seeing me? You might think that. And then imagine, what are you seeing? You're simply seeing the thin layer of yourself. Is that you? If you say that yes, then you are indirectly you are saying that your body is you. But this is not the case. And even you see through that analysis, it's so funny. Even you, don't. You have to say that even you don't see yourself. Then how can I expect someone else seeing you? So through that, again, that solidly identifiable entity as the self will dissolve. So that absence of such a self is known as the selflessness of autonomous substantial nature, the subtler selflessness of the person, according to all other Buddhist schools other than Prasangika. Next, okay, we read subtle selflessness, page 63, numbered as 63. Subtle selflessness and subtle selflessness and subtle selflessness of persons are asserted to be mutually inclusive. The subtle selflessness of persons is asserted to be a person's emptiness of being substantially existent in the sense of being self-sufficient. To put it more concretely, it is emptiness of being autonomous substantial existence, or emptiness of being self-sufficient substantial existent. From among the 18 subschools of the Great Exposition School, Vaibhashika school has 18 subschools. The 5 Samitiya subschools do not assert, okay, we're going to just jump through all these things, skip off all these things. Subschools do not assert that a person's emptiness of being substantially existent in the sense of being self-sufficient is the subtle selflessness, because they consider that as substantially okay. The proponents of the Great Exposition do not assert the presentation of cause and subtle selflessness of phenomena. Okay, this is what I said earlier. So it is the Vaibhashika and Sutrantika who don't accept the selflessness of phenomena, right? Subtle, nor the coarse, nor subtle of the selflessness of phenomena, because they hold that all established bases, that is such a mind, such as mind, body, house, and so on, have a self of phenomena. That is, they truly exist and have a difference of entity, of subject and object. Now, objects abandoned by the parts. Okay, so this is what I need to explain to you before we read. What is that to be abandoned while you are on the path? So again, let me explain from the point of view of the common Buddhist, schools, Buddhist schools in common. Say they are, broadly speaking, there are 2 goals: nirvana and Buddhahood. Nirvana and Buddhahood, right? So, just as there are 2 goals, there should be 2 kinds of obstacles which can come in the way to one's achieving nirvana and one's achieving Buddhahood. There should be 2 obstacles, broadly speaking, right? So, now what is that obstacle which comes in the way to achieving Buddhahood and which comes in the way to achieving nirvana, right? So here, when you ask as to what that is, then the schools differ, right? Okay. It is actually differ in a slight sense, just very slightly. It is only Vaibhashika who present it differently. Otherwise, rest of the schools, they agree. So Vaibhashika, they use a different terminology. So they say that the obstacle which comes in the way to achieving nirvana, they call it as the afflictive ignorance. Afflictive ignorance. So usually, you must have always been hearing about the afflictive obscuration. Instead of that, the terminology the Vaibhashika uses is afflictive ignorance rather than afflictive obscuration, right? And then whereas the one which comes in the way to achieving Buddhahood, they call it non-afflictive ignorance, right? Instead of the obscuration to omniscience or the cognitive obscurations and so forth, they don't use the word obscurations. They simply use, the afflictive ignorance and the non-afflictive ignorance. As simple as that, right? Okay, now let's read. There are two types of ignorance to be abandoned through the path: afflictive ignorance and non-afflictive ignorance. The first, afflictive ignorance, mainly prevents the attainment of liberation, personal liberation. Illustrations of afflictive ignorance are a consciousness conceiving a self of person and the three poisons, desire, hatred, and ignorance, which arise on account of this conception as well as these seeds. Meaning, this afflictive ignorance constitutes desire, hatred, and ignorance along with the seeds, right? So ignorance need not necessarily be a manifest state of mind. It can be even in the form of seeds. The next one, non-afflictive ignorance mainly prevents the attainment of all-knowingness or Buddhahood. Illustrations of non-afflictive ignorance are the four causes of non-knowingness, such as the non-afflictive obscuration, that is the ignorance of the profound and subtle qualities of a Buddha. Okay, so what are the four causes of non-knowingness? Let me explain them. Number one, the cause of non-knowingness in relation to the length of the time, because of the enormous length of time. The story goes back to who is that? I think it is Shariputra. Yeah, Shariputra. Story goes back to Shariputra, who is one of the principal disciples of Buddha Shakyamuni. So he achieved arhatship, and then he was wondering as to where his mother has taken birth. No, that is in terms of, okay, so the length of time, enormous length of time, this is with Kimdape, I don't know his name in Sanskrit. Venerable Chugila, you know that? So there's one guy by the name Kimdape. So what happened was that he was 80 years old, and then his sons eventually, by following the instructions of the wives, they started abandoning their father, who was 80 years old. So he had nowhere to go, and then he had to go begging for food, and people, they were reluctant to give food. So he was really undergoing hard, difficult times. And then eventually someone gave him an idea. Why don't you become monk? If you become monk, then you can go on alms begging. And then he thought, oh, this is a good idea. And then he went to Shariputra. Oh, this is Shariputra, yeah. Then he went to Shariputra. Oh, please make me a monk. And Shariputra, so in those times, unlike nowadays, in those times when they were arahats and these great beings, it's not easy for you to become a monk. So they will first of all examine as to whether or not you have the very special connection in terms of virtues, enormous virtue for you to become a monk. Unless you have enormous amount of money in the bank, you will not be entitled to go in those, what you call, the gambling spots, to make sure that, you can do something there. So similarly, in those times, for one to become a monk, these great arahats, they will, sit in deep meditation, and then they will awaken their clairvoyant power. From there, then they will see through, your past lives as to whether you have that enormous amount of investment, of virtues. And then Shariputra, he went into deep meditative state, and then clairvoyant, was aroused, and then through that clairvoyance, he was simply looking through his past lives to see if he has any investment of virtues. And then Shariputra said, oh, sorry, you cannot become monk. You don't have that, the basis as a credential for you to become monk. Enormous virtue. And then he really became so sad. He started, shouting, crying, wailing, and went straight to the Buddha. And the Buddha seeing him, "What happened, my child?" And he said, "Oh, look, Shariputra, he has been so unkind, not making me a monk." And the Buddha said, "Oh, don't worry." So the Buddha doesn't really have to, go through all this meditative say and these things. Immediately he knows everything, And he said, "Don't worry, my child, you can become a monk." Because, actually he did have that potential, special, power of the virtue to become a monk. Because Shariputra was unable to see that through his clairvoyant power. Because when he accumulated that enormous virtue to become monk was many kalpas ago, eons ago. Because of the enormous length of time, Shariputra's clairvoyant power couldn't really reach there. Right? Whereas the Buddha's clairvoyant power can reach everywhere just within an instant of time. In no time he can reach it. So he saw that. So what was that virtue? Amazing. So perhaps some of you must have heard it. So once this man was just a small bee. And the bee happened to, landed on a cow dung. And the cow dung happened to be washed away by a stream of, rainwater around a place. And obviously it accidentally just took around. The water was just, circling around the stupa, which contains the Buddha relics. And because of the power of the Buddha relics, this innocent, bee accumulated enormous merit just to have taken one round accidentally, So that is the virtue which the Buddha saw, Then he said, yes. Okay, and then finally, he did achieve arahat within that very lifetime. Yeah. So this is the non-afflictive, the cause of the non-afflictive ignorance pertaining to the enormous length of time. Next, pertaining to the enormous, distance. So that was with Mugalyana, not with Shariputra. So Mugalyana, he was wondering as to where his mother must have taken birth, so that he can, go and recall the mother to do virtue, to do dharma. So then he was trying to, through his clairvoyant power. And Mugalyana, he is believed to be the supreme of all the disciples of the Buddha Shakyamuni in terms of the quality of the miraculous power. And he started using his miraculous power, clairvoyance, to see as where his mother has taken birth, and he couldn't trace it. But of course his mother was, not Buddha. So, of course, sentient being, not yet achieved arahatship. So within samsara, she's somewhere there. So, but he was unable to trace her. And then he reported this to the Buddha, and Buddha immediately said that she has taken birth in a realm, in a world known as Visirjama. Visirjama means the world blazing with light. Immediately the Buddha said that. So because that happened to be, again, so far away from our world system, that Mugalyana's clairvoyance cannot really, reach there. Okay, number 2. Now number 3. Number 3 is, the ordinary, the arahats. Arahats means those who have already achieved nirvana, liberated from samsara, So they cannot really see the very profound, very subtle, the profound qualities of the Buddha's ethical discipline. Very profound qualities of the Buddha's ethical discipline cannot be seen by even by the arahats. So it's because of the profundity of the qualities. So the ignorance, non-afflictive ignorance pertaining to the profundity of the qualities of the Buddha. And then, next, And then next, the arahats, again, they cannot really see through, the exact each of the causes, causes as to what brought this, what do you call this? Clip? Sorry? Paperclip. So say, what karma, or, what has really brought this here? Why not, this is a little bit inside, rather than outside? Or what is the cause of, my hair here? Hairs, one here and not here, right next to it. What is the cause? Of course, it should have cause. But whereas arahats cannot see that. So it is because of the diversity, because of the diversity in terms of the causes, the subtle causes of karma, that the arahats, they cannot see through. So now, every time I'm referring to arahats, why? Because out of the two things to be abandoned, arahats have already abandoned the first. The afflictive ignorance, they have abandoned that. Even after abandoning that, the pollutants or the mental fault, still there are indications of their weaknesses. So there are four primary weaknesses, and these are known as these weaknesses are because of their not having abandoned something else. And what is something else? That is the non-afflictive ignorance, which is of four kinds, right? Okay. Non-afflictive ignorance mainly prevents the attainment of all-knowingness, referring to Buddhahood. Illustrations of non-afflictive ignorance are the four causes of non-knowingness, which I've already explained, such as the non-afflictive obscuration, that is the ignorance of the profound and the subtle qualities of a Buddha. With respect to the obstructions, aside from obstructions to liberation, non-afflictive ignorance, the proponents of the great exposition do not accept the designation obstructions to omniscience. So the Navabhaskas, they don't accept the terminology obstructions to omniscience. Rather, they call it what? Non-afflictive obscuration, ignorance. Now next, the nature of the paths. With respect to the paths of the three vehicles, Hera, Solitary Realizer, and the Bodhisattva, they assert a presentation of the five paths. This is common to all schools. Path of accumulation, path of preparation, path of seeing, path of meditation, path of normal learning. So let me explain to you as to why these five paths are given these specific names. First, the path of accumulation. So this is general presentation, general explanation. Path of accumulation. So say for Sravasti Abbey to first of all construct that hostel for the nuns, I don't think the builders started bringing one stone and then again putting up there one steel putting up. I don't think they started as the requirements or the objects. Okay. Safe trip. Do you think that the first bag of the cement, they use it? Instead of that, they first accumulate all the requirements, all the the materials. Yeah, accumulate all the materials rather than getting one material, use it, second material, using it. First accumulate. After accumulating that, then we'll see to as to how to use them. So that first stage of just as we need to accumulate the materials for the construction, similarly, the materials for the construction of the Buddhahood or Nirvana is the accumulations of merit and wisdom. So first, we need to accumulate merit and wisdom. So that stage, where you primarily involve yourself for accumulating merit and wisdom is what is known as the path of accumulation. So next is to prepare yourself, to actually come up with the well-shaped, well-formed building. So what is a well-formed building? Well-formed building is just as the well-formed building has all the shapes and ready for the occupants to step in. Similarly, the well-formed building in the sense of the path, in the sense of our goal, is the path of seeing and onwards. Because at the path of seeing onwards, then you really start abandoning the pollutants, mental obscurations, defilements. So as you start eliminating the mental obscurations, then you become really close to Buddhahood, the actual building of the Buddhahood. So this is the actual stage. And then those which are close to achieving that state of path of seeing, is known as the path of preparation. Preparing yourself. You're so prepared, well prepared to achieve that true path. The path of seeing, the Arya paths, the true paths, right? So the second stage, where you have already accumulated enormous amount of merit and wisdom, right? And then you become so prepared to be really qualified as a path, true path. So that stage is known as the path of preparation. And then prepare to what? Prepare to really see the reality as it is. What is the reality? In the context of Vipassana, we say the 16 aspects of the Four Noble Truths. In the case of the Prasangika, the Madhyamikas and Chittamatra, it is the ultimate reality, emptiness. So so then after preparing to achieve that, then you actually see the reality as it is. So that is the path of seeing, which means that you see the reality as it is, so barely, so directly, non-conceptually. So simply by seeing the reality as it is not sufficient, to achieve full enlightenment. So for that, whatever reality that you have seen, you need to familiarize with that. So making familiarity with the reality that you have seen barely, directly, is known as path of familiarization or the path of meditation. So then after that, now you are very successful. You have, through by means of familiarity, through by means of meditation, accustoming yourself to the reality that you have seen, then you are able to eliminate all the misconceptions and the pollutants, mental stains. So at that point, you achieve a state of perfect accomplishment of your goal. So at that point, once you accomplish your final goal, you don't have to learn anything more. You don't have to learn anything, because you have accomplished the mission. So why should you learn anything? So at that point, you are in that stage is known as the path of no more learning, right? So this is how, as to what it means by each of these 5 paths. The path of accumulation, part of preparation, part of seeing, part of meditation, part of no more learning. However, they do not accept the exalted wisdoms of the 10 Bodhisattva grounds. Okay, fine. They assert that so as for the paths, I would very much go in line with what you said, what the Prasangikas and others say. Simply go through that, right? So these small things which differ from others is fine. They assert that the first 15, this is what I said earlier, yesterday, first 15 of the 16 moments of the forbearance and knowledge constitute the part of seeing. Again, you might, in your mind, what is forbearance? What do you mean by, what is that? Forbearance and knowledge. Okay. Let's put it this way. Four Noble Truths. first the Four Noble Truths, right? Four Noble Truths. Now, forbearance and knowledge, they are to do with, they are to do with the parts which understand the Four Noble Truths. Okay. 就是 Geshe, Geshe. Okay. Say, to give you a very common example, we have, say you are fighting with a thief. Thief enters your room and you are fighting with him, So there are two periods, two stages. One, you are actually fighting with him. And this first stage. Second stage, you are successful. You win. You are able to throw him outside. Simply by throwing him is not the end. He can again regain his health, regain his, strength and come back. What do you have to do? You have to close the door and latch the door, right? So this means first you actual fighting, one, and throwing him out and then latching the door so that you can relax peacefully. Otherwise, if you don't latch the door, you relax peacefully, he might kill you, right? So similarly, when you fight with the mental pollutants, it is done in two steps. One, the actual fighting, and the next, actual abandoning, which means that you close the door and latch it, right? So, from the point of view of the higher schools, these two stages are known as, first one is the uninterrupted path, and second one is the path of liberation. Uninterrupted path is a path when you are actually struggling or fighting with the pollutants. And the liberated path, or the path of liberation, is when you actually win over. When you actually gain the victory by latching the door from the inside. Victory over the mental pollutants. Right? So, so here, this is actually a terminology needs not necessarily be confined to Vaibhashika's way. It is also used by the higher schools. We have to know this. So the actual fighting, what is the terminology used by the other schools? The uninterrupted path. So the forbearance is the uninterrupted path. Forbearance, because at that point you are struggling, you're fighting with it. Which means that while fighting with it, you are not happy. You have to bear, the challenges. So next, what is next? The knowledge, forbearance and knowledge. Knowledge, it is, when it is the path of liberation, the second stage, the second step, when you're able to, throw the mental pollutant out and then latch it from inside. So that is the knowledge, or the path of liberation, or the knowledge. Why is it called knowledge? Again, this is this we can know from this analogy. Say you are in the process of learning. One. From this effort of the process of learning, then what will happen? You'll get knowledge of it. So the knowledge is the resultant state, and the process of learning is the preceding training, right? So the liberation happens after the struggle, right? So the path of liberation is what is known as the knowledge in this context. Forbearance means always the uninterrupted path, which is fighting with the pollutants, and the knowledge is the path of liberation, which achieves the victory, over the mental pollutants. Forbearance and knowledge. So, okay, I will explain it. What are these 16 moments? So look, you have to base it on the Four Noble Truths. So what is the first truth? Truth of suffering. Truth of suffering, how many realms are there in samsara? So broadly speaking, 3, right? Desire realm, form, formless. We put the form and formless together, you know, as the higher realm. The desire realm and the higher realm, you know. Higher realm constituting form and formless, put together. So the suffering, the truth of suffering, you know, there can be the truth of suffering of the desire realm and the truth of suffering of the higher realm. Right? Okay. So the truth of suffering of desire realm and truth of suffering of higher realm. So now we have the truth of suffering divided into 2. Similarly, the truth of the cause of suffering divided into 2. So how many we have now? 8. So we have to get 16. Right? So presently we have how many? 8. Each of the Four Noble Truths divided into, you know, the specific truth of the desire realm and the specific truth of the higher realm. Right? So here in this, you know, when you are to give the 16, when you are to understand the 16 moments of these parts, right? So here, the desire realm, you know, for something which is with desire realm, we give the designation, the phenomena. Whenever there's the word phenomena, you have to immediately come to know that it means it is referring to desire realm. And then subsequent. Whenever there's a word subsequent, it simply means what is subsequent to desire realm? Higher realm of the 2, right? Immediately you have to refer to the higher realm. Right? So it's like this. Means the forbearance. So perhaps Chugila, Venerable Chugila, how do you say this in English? You have it in translation? The 16 moments. Otherwise, I will do a rough translation here. Do you have that? No. Does that have these 16 moments? Are you sure? There's 16 characteristics of the Four Noble Truths, and this is different. 16 characteristics is what I've said earlier. This is very different from this. These are the 16 parts, right? Okay, so it doesn't matter. I will roughly translate it. It is the, you know, it is like the dharma, instead of phenomena, I will translate it as the dharma, you know. Che is dharma and phenomena both. So the dharma forbearance, oh, it's fine, yeah. Dharma forbearance of suffering. Dharma forbearance of suffering means, you know, dharma, immediately you have to think of the desire realm. Forbearance is what? Uninterpreted path. Uninterpreted path which understands the suffering nature of the desire realm. Of course, this is very complicated, you know, but we are doing it well. So it needs exercise. It needs exercise. So now let's see. What we should be doing is quite simple. Now let us put it this way. First, what is the terminology, a technical word used for, you know, desire realm in this context? Dharma. What is the specific word used for the higher realms in this context? Subsequent. What is the special word used for uninterrupted path? Forbearance. What is this, the special word used for the path of liberation? Knowledge, right? You should be really very, you know, sharp and you should be so precise and you should be quick to be able to correlate, the specific words and the references, right? Okay, now let's do the exercise. Before doing actual exercise, I will give you a clue. So the basic foundation is Four Noble Truths. Now what you do is the Four Noble Truths, it has the truth of suffering. It has two parts, the suffering of desire realm and the suffering of higher realm. And the suffering of desire realm is understood by the uninterrupted path and, okay, the truth of suffering has two divisions. What are they? Truth of suffering of desire realm and truth of suffering of higher realm. I told you everything, but I don't complain anything, even if you cannot say it. Because, for me, it took, several days and so forth to really, get it so clearly. So I have no, complaint. It was you. I understand. Okay. Of these four truths, the truth of suffering has two branches. In this context, what are they? Desire realm and truth of suffering of? What is desire realm? What is the specific word for that? Dharma. What is the specific word for higher realm? Subsequent. Good. So now look. What is the first one? Truth of suffering of? Desire realm. So this, truth of suffering is understood by a part. Is seen by a part as the truth of suffering. So for that part, there are two parts. The part which fights with, the pollutants, and the part which is already, won over the fight. So the uninterrupted part, uninterrupted part, and the path of liberation, right? Okay, so now let us connect it this way. You see anything else? Okay, so let's connect this way. This is the main thing, which is the truth of suffering. Truth of suffering of desire realm, desire. Truth of suffering, desire realm, plus, it has further two divisions, which is uninterrupted path, uninterrupted path, seeing the truth of suffering of desire realm. Well, let us put it this way, right? And this way, right? This is truth of suffering. And this is what? Desire realm. And these are the two parts. The uninterrupted, this is the lower one, the uninterrupted part, which understands the truth of suffering of desire realm, right? And the path of liberation, which understands the truth of suffering of the desire realm. Now, let's use the specific technical term here. The dharma, meaning what? Desire realm. The dharma of what is the uninterrupted path? Forbearance. The forbearance of the dharma of suffering. And what is the next? The knowledge of dharma of suffering. Right? So out of 16, we're successful with the first two. So now what is going to be the next? Oh, higher realm. Good. Higher realm. So the truth of suffering is the same. So now we simply move from, the desire realm to the higher realm. So say this is the higher realm. Now let's work with it. What? The forbearance, instead of dharma, what is that? Forbearance of